inside of the carton, when you receive your Flex Steel furniture, there will be the components. In this case, they are the legs. These are the stretchers. There's also a hardware packet that has the fasteners needed and an assembly instruction. So with the hardware kit comes a Allen wrench that fits the hex head screws that are included with the furniture. In this case too, I wanted to point out that the screws that are used, they are a Allen or hex head, and there are two pieces of hardware that go on with the screws. One is the locking washer that goes on against the head of the screw, and then there's the flat washer that will go against the spring washer. Now this assembly is one of the occasional tables that can be a little more difficult to put together because there are 6 legs and there are stretchers included. So we're going to demonstrate that we're going to put the legs in place sequentially with the stretchers so that you're able to fit the last stretcher into the assembly. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have already pulled out the bolts with the lock washers or spring washers and the flat washers, and I've positioned them around the table to save some time here. I do have 2 additional tools. One is the Phillips screwdriver that we'll use to insert the screws for the stretchers. And then the other one is more of a T-handled Allen wrench that will speed up some of the final assembly as well. Hand assembly is always the best. I know we all like to use our power tools, but when you're assembling the furniture, the power tools can get us into trouble very quickly with stripping threads or cracking the wood. So I'm starting this first leg, and I'm gonna pull the bolt back out. So what I want to do is I'm going to insert it, get it started on the thread, and I'm only going to turn it about 2 turns, 3 turns with my fingers, okay? So it's very loose here. I'll go ahead and put in the second bolt, same thing, give it about 2 turns. That'll hold it in place enough, but it gives me movement so that we can fit the stretchers in here as well. So I've got one leg installed. Then I go ahead and insert a stretcher. Then I take the next leg and I go ahead and put the stretcher into the hole. Okay, so this way I've got freedom of movement, and that sequence of putting the leg, then the stretcher, then adding the leg makes it easier to fit these in between the legs. So now I've got this second leg in here. I'm going to line it up with the hardware hole. Got 2 threads there, or 2 rotations of the bolt, 2 to 3. So again, it's very loose, but it'll start stiffening up here as we get additional components on here. Okay, again, I'm taking the stretcher, inserting it into the leg. Now I have my next leg. I insert it onto the stretcher, rotate it into position here, insert the hardware, 2 or 3 rotations with my fingers. Next stretcher, attach it to the leg. And notice I have this on a rug to keep from scratching the surface and to make sure that we don't cause any problems with the finish. Insert the stretcher, then attach the leg. Again, very important to start the fasteners by hand, that you're able to get the threads lined up appropriately. Okay, now I'm down to the last leg here. So I'm going to do a stretcher here, put that in place. Then I'm going to do another stretcher, put it into the other leg. And then a little balancing going on here. Then I'm going to take this leg, install it into this stretcher, then this stretcher into the leg, and everything goes together very easily if you follow that sequence and process. Go ahead and start this hardware. you may notice it, some of these, threading them by hand are hard to start. So if you're using a power tool, that can get, you can cause some problems there doing that. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hand tighten them down. I'm not going to make it really stiff at this point because all of this movement that you see here, we need everything to naturally settle in its proper location. So I'm going to take, this is where you would use the Allen wrench. Again, for speed, I'm using a T-handle instead. The other thing that I am going to do is, as I am installing tightening the fasteners, I'm going to pick up slightly on these legs so that I'm taking all the tolerance of the holes. And what that's doing is the top edge of the leg is flat and the bottom edge of the table is flat. And if we start to tighten those down, that can create some binding. So I'm going to lift up on the leg so those two flat surfaces are separated a little bit, and then I have movement. If I push it all the way down, there's no movement. So as we go through and tighten up all the fasteners, we can accidentally build in a bind that could cause some issues where you might end up cracking the apron on the outside. So I'm taking my hand, I'm lifting up on the leg. I'm going to tighten the fastener just snug. I want the movement still, so it's snug. I'll bring this one in to where the washers are not moving. Very loosely fastened there. And then I'm going to start working my way around the piece of furniture. And again, I'm pulling up on the leg or separating the leg from the tabletop so that there's movement. You probably can't see it in the video, but everything's starting to kind of fit together. And this movement you see me doing, I'm trying to, again, separate the leg from the tabletop a little bit here so that we reduce any kind of bind that's in there. Okay, so just with the legs snug, did not really do a lot of tightening there. Just bring down the fastener heads to the spring washer and the flat washer so that it's snugged up. You don't need to put a lot of pressure on those fasteners. Then we'll move on to the installation of the screws. And again, these screws are there to hold these in place and to bind together the legs at this lower level here further down the table. These again do not need to be extremely tight. They are simply there to hold this joint together between the leg and the stretcher. And you'll also notice as you're putting these together, there's quite an angle there. So again, the fastener is there simply to hold the part in place. Not a lot of torque here. If you do it by hand, it does not take very long to get these installed. And I hope it comes through in the video, but like I said, I'm just installing these screws. I'm not putting a tremendous amount of force in the groove where the screw head goes. I can still see the edge of the screw heads. And I think this is where use of a power tool is not recommended at all. These are nice cutting screws. They go easily. Go. Okay, all the screws are installed. I'll collect my tools and set them aside. And there's the completed assembly.